Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. For those of you that I have not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Christine Fife, and I'm with Big Sky Public Relations, and I'm working on behalf of the Montana Department of Transportation. I'm the communications manager for the Batavia Intersection Improvements Project, and I'm available to help throughout the course of this outreach. I'll share my contact information at the end of the presentation for anyone wanting additional communication. My primary role is to help MDT in a number of ways, including being a point of contact for folks like you with questions, comments, or concerns as they pertain to the Batavia Intersection Improvements Project. Due to COVID-19, many of you are unable to attend the one-on-one appointments that we hosted last month in Kalispell. The purpose of this meeting is to provide an additional opportunity for the project team to offer information and answer questions while maintaining the health and safety of attendees. Joining me today are some of our folks from MDT, Bob Vosen and John Schmidt. Kelly Williams is trying to get on this meeting, but is having some technical difficulties this morning. So John and Bob, would you take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bob and I'm the district administrator for the Missoula district with Montana Department of Transportation. And I just want to take a minute this morning to thank all of you for joining us today. I'm sorry we're not able to meet in person. That is very much my preferred way of doing these things, is to have an opportunity to actually sit down and visit with you, meet you in person. But with the challenges we have in front of us, this virtual public meeting's the next best thing we can do to be able to reach out and involve members of the public. So again, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join us this morning.
And good morning, everybody. For those of you I haven't met, John Schmidt, the Missoula District construction engineer. I'm generally responsible for construction in Western Montana, but am a full-time resident of the Flathead Valley. So.
This is Kelly Williams. I guess I think I'm on here. I'm not sure if anybody can hear me, but I'm with MDT as the consultant design project manager. So thanks for everybody for joining us, and thank you, Christine.
Thank you. We're also joined today by representatives from our engineering team, Robert Pesha and Associates. The engineers have been working hard to develop improvement options for this intersection and are here to explain these alternatives for us. RPA folks, would you take a minute to introduce yourselves?
Sure, thanks, Christine. My name is Scott Randall with Robert Pesha and Associates, and I'm the project manager for this phase of this improvement project.
Hi everyone, I'm April Girth. I'm the design engineer for the project and will be responsible for the plans development once we decide on an alternative.
Thanks so much, everyone. Also with us is my colleague, Katie Cleets, and she'll be monitoring the Q&A system to address your questions as cohesively as possible at the end of the presentation. Katie, can you say hello and explain the question and answer process to our attendees?
Good morning. Thanks, Christine, and hello, everyone. As Christine said, I'm Katie Cleets. I see some familiar faces, well, names, I should say, on the screen, so happy to be part of this conversation. I'm also with Big Sky Public Relations. As Christine mentioned, I'll be watching the Q&A system throughout the presentation, and at the end, we'll hold a question and answer session. So if you have a question, please feel free to type it into the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. It looks like two little chat bubbles. So we will address all of the questions at the end of the presentation, but you may feel free to enter them at any point in time. And as we all know, technology can be unpredictable at times, so we appreciate your patience. We'll be recording this presentation and placing it on the project webpage for later viewing. So with that, I will turn things over to Bob to give us a little bit of project background.
Sorry about that, everybody. I started talking before I pressed the unmute button. So thanks, Katie. This project is focused on the intersection of Highway 2 and Batavia Lane in Smith Valley. It's the intersection right immediately adjacent to Kelly Ray's and Smith Valley School. The project was brought about because of a safety audit that was conducted by the Federal Highway Administration It identified that this intersection is at a high risk for crashes, severe crashes in particular. Also, this area presents some challenges, and that is the presence of the Smith Valley School, the close proximity of Kelly Rays. You can see on your screen right now the three approaches to Kelly Rays and the approaches to the parking area at Smith Valley School, all very close to the intersection. And then the intersection is a Batavia Lane ties into Highway 2, which is US Highway 2, and we do have problems with speeding traffic through there, even though it's posted at a reduced limit. There seems to be some confusion there as well. So, and then the final part of this is the fact that we have the Batavia waterfowl production area, which is a protected area to the right side of your screen over there, which further limits what we can do with the roadway. We can't impede into that or infringe into that right away. So all these factors together make for a pretty unique situation, and this is one that MDT, along with our partners at RPA, we're working to find the best solution. So several years ago, when the area was, or this site was first identified as being in need of improvements, the initial plan was just to design a solution and begin construction as soon as funding was available. MDT, however, decided to take a step back. I wanted to make sure that we were coming up with the right solution, the best solution for the problems at hand, and wanted to make sure we had clear understanding of all the challenges at the area and make sure that we were doing the best job of expending taxpayer dollars in the best manner possible to provide the safest solution that meets the needs of the intersection and the traveling public. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott now, and he can share some of what we've learned from our initial public outreach that we've done over the past several months. Scott?
Sure. Thanks, Bob. So back in March, just prior to the onset of COVID, back when we could actually still meet in person, we held a public open house at Smith Valley School. I'm guessing some of you here today were able to attend that meeting. So kind of the purpose of that meeting was to identify what the concerns and issues are at the intersection prior to us trying to develop solutions. So for those who are not there, and for those who were, I guess one of the exercises that we did at the meeting was to focus on identifying the top priorities for improvements at the intersection. So for this exercise, we actually gave each person 3 beads and asked them to place them in jars, which represented their top priorities at the intersection. So we asked them to place these beads either in all 3 in one jar if they wanted to, or they could distribute them amongst multiple jars. And this graphic shows the results of what that exercise told us. And it really helped identify what the top priorities of the community and those people who attended the meeting were for the intersection. So as you can see in the graphic, providing a safe crossing for pedestrians was by far the highest priority. It received more than twice the number of beads as any of the other priorities. So that speaks very highly to us about what we're trying to do out here to make sure, number one, we need to make sure it's safe, and especially for people who are crossing the highway. The other top priorities that we heard about are the left turn from Batavia and decreasing speeds along the highway. Those also rated very highly as far as top priorities. And then you can see some of these other areas that were also concerns and things that we're thinking about as we're looking at improvements. So following that meeting, we went back and we worked to identify kind of all the possible solutions that we could think about for the intersection. We looked at everything from simple changes to approaches to realigning the intersection, signals, roundabouts, relocating the intersection, kind of to the southwest, to a different location, grade separated pedestrian crossing, kind of everything that we could think about. In all, we identified 12 possible alternatives for improvements. We then went through and evaluated each of those 12 alternatives for how well they would address, those concerns and those issues we're trying to solve at the intersection. So any of these 12 alternatives that did not at least partially address what were our top concerns, we dropped out for further consideration. So this helped us, narrow down the options that we were looking at. This process then resulted in 8 of those options being dropped out, and then 4 that we actually carried forward for more detailed evaluation. So these 4 alternatives included an option to realign the intersection and install raised medians while keeping the stop sign along Batavia Lane. 2 options that included traffic signals, one with raised medians and one without, and a single lane roundabout option. So the next step in this process was that we went back out and presented these 4 alternatives to identified stakeholders and the public at the one-on-one public meetings we held last month. So after these discussions, we talked with residents, key community stakeholders like the county commissioners, school representatives, Kelly Rays, the fire department. It became pretty clear that 2 of the options stood out as best meeting the needs of the intersection. So that kind of brings up to where we're at today. So this includes the single lane roundabout alternative and the traffic signal with raised medians alternative. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to April, who's going to walk us through each of these 2 alternatives in more detail.
Thanks, Scott. So the first of the 2 options that best meets the priorities that were determined is a single lane roundabout. So some benefits of the roundabout are speed reduction due to the raised medians and the curved approaches to the intersection, the ability for vehicles to make U-turns, reduction in crashes, most particularly in severe crashes, and the safe crossings for pedestrians. So I'd like to expand a little bit more on some of these topics, and I'm going to start with safety. So roundabouts are really unique intersections in that for both motorists and pedestrians, you only need to look for traffic in one direction at a time. So for example, let's look at if we were trying to take a left turn from Batavia onto US 2. So in a typical intersection, you would need to look to your left, here looking for vehicles coming from the left heading to Kalispell. You'd need to look for your right for vehicles heading to the west, and then as well as be aware of any cars that are in the west US 2 left turn lane trying to turn onto Batavia. So there are a lot of potential places for crashes to occur with all of those vehicles moving in all those different directions. So for a roundabout, the only vehicles you need to look for are those that are already in the roundabout and to your left. Additionally, should you make a mistake and pull out in front of another car, the resulting crash would be a side swipe or a rear end crash instead of the typically more dangerous high-speed T-bone crashes. The same safety benefits apply to the pedestrians as well. Pedestrians only need to look to the left to begin crossing the roadway. After crossing the first lane, if the second lane is not clear, the pedestrian can stop and wait in the center island for a gap to cross the second lane. And the distances to cross are much shorter as well. They're just 2 narrow roadways versus 3 lanes with wider shoulders at a typical intersection. And the speeds of the vehicles when they approach the crosswalk will also be slower in the roundabout, since if a traffic signal is green or if there's nothing there at all, nothing slowing traffic or stopping traffic, the vehicles would be traveling at highway speeds, which would likely result in death if they were to strike a pedestrian. The speeds within a roundabout would be closer to 25 miles per hour at the crosswalk. And although the idea of a pedestrian being stuck at any speed is terrible, the lower speed really increases the chances of survival and reduces the chance of severe injuries. Additionally, RRFBs, or rapid rectangular flashing beacons, as installed in Big Fork, would also be installed at the crosswalks to allow pedestrians to push a button to turn on bright flashing LED lights to alert motorists that they're crossing the roadway. So roundabouts can also be designed to accommodate large trucks. The center island has a truck apron, which you can see in kind of light gray on the graphic. And the intent of this apron is to allow the rear tires of a trailer of a semi to track into the center areas of the roundabout as the driver were to steer around the outside travel lane. And the apron is low and almost flat, so trucks can easily mount the curb, and their loads won't shift much, and it's pretty easy for drivers to pull around it without much discomfort. And even oversized loads will be able to pass through the roundabout. And as the design of a roundabout progresses, we add extra truck aprons, sometimes on the outside of the curb, to provide to fit even the largest trucks that are passing through here, such as windmill blade transports. But every option has negatives and positives. And the downside of a roundabout is that they're relatively new in Montana and they require people to change from what they're comfortable with. So educating drivers and pedestrians must also occur when a roundabout is installed. So the second option that best meets the determined priorities is a traffic signal. And the signal has many benefits as well. The new raised medians will reduce traveling speeds and limit where cars can enter and leave US 2, which reduces potential conflicts points between turning and through traveling vehicles. Additionally, the intersection was realigned, you can see, to slow the vehicles turning right onto Batavia and to improve visibility. A new right turn lane onto Batavia will remove slowing vehicles from the stream of faster through traffic. Also, the sometimes difficult to make left turn from Batavia onto US 2 would be much easier, and the traffic on Batavia would only back up when the signal is red. However, most of the time the signal will be red for Batavia, so that allows the higher volume US 2 to mostly not have to stop. So when a vehicle approaches the intersection on Batavia, the signal will begin the process of turning green for Batavia and stopping traffic on US 2. So crosswalks will be better protected as well, but they'll have the standard and easily understood walk, don't walk, and countdown timer indications that we're all familiar with. Again, every option has its good and bad, and the negatives of the signal are that should a vehicle run the red light, the results can be devastating high-speed T-bone crashes or high-speed impacts with pedestrians, as we talked about before. So speeds in front of the school would not physically be reduced. Therefore, someone breaking the speed limit would still proceed through the area at high speed. Also, during low volume times outside of the busy morning and evening rush, cars trying to turn left from Batavia will almost always have to stop at the red light and wait for the signal to cycle through US 2 before a green appears. So some items to note for both approaches. The community has spoken loud and clear that there should be a change in the speed limit signs, and we agree. The 45-mile-an-hour signs will be moved further from the intersection to allow more time for motorists to slow before they reach the intersection, and they'll be easier to see once we move them away from all the other signs and all the other distractions that are in the area. Also, MDT is working with Kelly Rays to make access modifications for both alternatives to better direct vehicles entering and leaving the businesses to improve safety and circulation within Kelly Ray's site, as well as we're coordinating with the school and other landowners. So these graphics that we're showing here today, they're still very, very preliminary, and they'll be changing as we work through the needs of the adjacent business and landowners. And you may also note that the second approach to the school, closest to the intersection, will be closed for both options. So that parking lot, really, it's only used for teachers, and eliminating that one driveway will help direct traffic where to go, and it will reduce some more conflict points. So as mentioned on both options improve the intersection. So to determine how well each meets the needs and priorities identified by the community that Scott already talked about, we evaluated the two options that were left. And so the amount of green in each circle indicates how well these alternatives meet each particular need that was identified. So based on the green circles, these two options are well matched in some areas, while each option comes out ahead in others. So for example, safe crossings, left turns, visibility, and right turns are about equal for both options. But the roundabout is more effective than the signal for reducing speeds and the actual movement of traffic to reduce delay for motorists. However, the roundabout accommodates, although the roundabout accommodates large trucks, the traffic signal does a better job. So John, would you like to talk to us about how a decision will be made and the next steps in this process?
You bet. Thanks, April. All the input we received and will hopefully continue to receive in the coming weeks will be considered by the team before a decision is made and a final design is drafted. This graphic shows how many factors must be taken into consideration before a decision is made. Public input is only one of these factors. When determining the appropriate option for this intersection, the project team will also need to consider maintenance needs, accessibility, safety, and cost, among other things. And so really that leads us to our next steps. This graphic illustrates the three major phases of a project. This project has undergone the planning phase and has entered the project development. During project development, an option for the intersection will be chosen, a design will be produced, funding secured, and any necessary right-of-way will be acquired. All of this needs to be completed before the project will move into construction. As I'm sure you can tell, this is not a quick and easy process. There's not a definitive timeline identified for this project, but it is reasonable to believe construction could begin in the next 3 to 6 years.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes the formal presentation portion of this meeting. We'll now move to question and answers, and the team will work to address as many questions as we can. If we're unable to get to your question today, we'll take your contact information and be in touch following the meeting. I'll leave my contact information up so anyone who's interested in additional information can feel free to contact me. Katie, do we have any questions or comments to be addressed this time?
Hey, Christine, it doesn't look like we have any quite yet. So folks, if you have any questions or comments that you would like to pass along, as a quick reminder, feel free to add those to that Q&A system that's at the bottom. It looks like 2 speech bubbles closest to the bottom where it says leave. So you're welcome to stay and ask questions. That's what we're here for. Or if you feel like you have what you need for right now, you're also welcome to drop off.
The project team will hang out for a little bit in the event that we get some questions. So feel free to participate, as Katie said, but we'll stay on for a little while waiting for anyone who has a comment or question to provide.
Okay, team, Barbara has a question. So her comment first is, good presentation. I'm just digesting, and thanks for that, Barbara. That's helpful to understand. Her question then is, how long is the project estimated to take, and how long will traffic be routed during construction? So maybe Scott, do you want to take the first half, and then John, maybe the second?
Yeah, I sure can. I mean, I think the short answer is we don't know at this time as far as how long it's going to take. As we mentioned here towards the end, we don't have a definitive timeline yet. We're still trying to figure out what the best solution is and then figure out how that fits within MDT's funding program. So we're hoping to get things, constructed maybe within the next 3 to 6 years, but we're kind of trying to figure out the solution first and then work our way through that process. So as far as routing during construction, I'm not sure I have a great answer for that one either. I think that a lot of that depends on what option is picked and how that construction process looks moving forward. I don't know if John or April, if you have anything else you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I'd just jump in, Barbara. Once we start construction, I guess construction timeline, generally we would expect this project to probably take a season, which for us is probably from May to September or somewhere in there, May to October. And then construction traffic during construction. We don't generally assign detours for construction like this. We would expect a contractor to maintain access. A more detailed traffic control plan would have to be developed once we had an alternative selected, and that may result in some finer details with how we get people in and out of the gas station or in and out of the school or in and out of Batavia Lane. But really, it's going to depend on a lot of factors, and one, which option is chosen, and then two, how the contractor that's chosen decides to build it. So tough question to answer, but hopefully that gave you some idea.
I see your follow-up there, Barbara, about not time, but routes north and south. So I think as John mentioned, we would maintain traffic north and south. Obviously, this is a major highway, so we'd maintain traffic during construction. It would just be, more typically slowed down during, the construction, through the construction zone and during the construction period. So hopefully that helps.
Hey, Scott, this is Bob. I'll jump in and add one more thing. And Christine, if you could go back to the slide, I'm not sure which number it was, the one that shows the raised median with the signal. Looks like that's probably slide 7, I believe. If you look at slide 7 here, I just want to point out that obviously the roundabout option, if that is selected, there'll be reconstruction, major reconstruction. But I wanted to point out that on this if this option is selected, it also will include a full reconstruction of the area. There's going to be curb and gutters on US 2 the full length of the project. So the whole roadway will be reconstructed. So I just am pointing that out to kind of clarify that if we do the signal route, it's not just throw a signal up and put some raised medians on the existing asphalt. That option also will be a complete reconstruction of the roadway through there.
Thanks, Bob. And so to somewhat piggyback off of that and just to extra clarify, Barbara's asked, so with the traffic light, can people turn left onto the highway out of Kelly Ray's, or is a median in the way?
So I can jump on that one. So Barbara, so if you're looking at this image on the screen right here, no, what we're trying to do is at least along the approach, the Kelly Ray's approach along Highway 2, one of the biggest concerns we have from a safety standpoint are left turns coming out of Kelly Ray's at that approach. And so with both of these options, and one of the main things we're trying to do is to restrict those left turning movements. And so we've been working with Kelly Ray's to make sure people can still access and, enter and leave their, their property there, but we want to make sure that they do it in a safe manner. So what we're trying to get people to do is to leave and go onto Batavia Lane instead of taking that left onto Highway 2. So again, we have some safety concerns with that movement, and so that's why we're looking at this option with raised medians. And then the roundabout option is fairly similar too, in that there'd be a median that would restrict that left turn. One difference that I'd point out is with the roundabout option, and Christine, maybe you could go back one slide real quick. With the roundabout option, you would not be able to take a direct left turn out of Kelly Ray's onto the highway, but what you could do is take a right to leave onto Highway 2 and then do U-turn right around the roundabout and head back towards Kalispell. So it seems a little different and maybe counterintuitive to what you think, but it actually helps kind of with that traffic movement if you're wanting to head back to Kalispell.
Scott, too, and if I could add in as well, we're still working with Kelly Ray's on how to best serve their site and also be safe on the highway and make traffic move. And you can see on both of these details that first approach on Batavia Lane, you can't take a left out of there as well. And we're still working on that. As we talk about this with Kelly Ray's, they're explaining to us how their site works, and we do think that we need to make some modification to these drawings to better suit how traffic is using their parking lot. So what you see there is likely not what is going to be constructed on either one of these alternatives. We will be doing something different with the Batavia raised medians.
Yeah, it looks like you had that follow-up, Barbara. So, to April's point, we are still trying to figure out what that access and those approaches would look like on Batavia, and making sure that it works for Kelly Ray's, but we can also make sure those movements are done safely too. So our major concern is the one, right on Highway 2, but also trying to make sure that there are two approaches onto Batavia, that we have some good control, but it still works for their business too.
As a final clarification, with the signal, the only way to go left into Kalispell if you're leaving Kelly Ray's is you'll have to exit onto Batavia and then travel through the signalized intersection to make that left turn.
Thanks, everyone. It looks like we're currently caught up on questions, but Barbara, if you have others, please feel free, of course, to add them in, or anybody else that's attending.
Thanks, everyone. I think we'll stay on for another 5 minutes and give people an opportunity to ask questions or post comments if they would like to do so. Again, I'll display my contact information, so you can feel free to contact me offline if you are interested in doing so. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have comments or questions, but we'll hang out for a few more minutes just in case something comes up that you think of while you're processing. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate your attendance this morning at this meeting and for your comments and questions. Like I said, please feel free to reach out to me if you think of something in the future or you have additional comments. We're always willing to talk to you about those. Please reach out to me via email, or you can call the project hotline at 406-207-4484. We're going to go ahead and end this presentation, and we really appreciate your time and participation in our meeting today. Thanks, everyone.